Welcome to Real Economy. I'm Maitreyi Seetharaman. Uncertainty is the new normal for us all. So I'm sitting down this week with the European Commission's Vice President in charge of investments and the Commissioner of Regional Affairs to talk about one way they suggest Europe can help create jobs by giving confidence to risk-averse investors. The plan to get risky projects that need money to combine grants given by the European Structural and Investment Funds with loans from the European Fund for Strategic Investments. The idea that as the EU is taking on more risk, the projects they are backing are also worth the private sector's money. But unless you are an EU bureaucrat, you may not know the difference between these two very similar sounding funds, or it may be the first time you've even heard of them. So let's get you up to speed.
Bob needs money for a project to help his local area create jobs and growth, so he approaches the managing authority of his government. It evaluates and approves Bob's plan if it fits the national plan for the industry or region the country wants to grow. The government can now take a national plan with many projects like Bob's to the European Union to tap into the European Structural and Investment Funds. These 5 funds have been given more than €400 billion from the EU budget to offer grants that will help countries fill gaps in public investments. The government's managing authority and the EU reach an agreement and manage the funding together on the overall national plan. The governments then top up the grants from their own budgets and manage the money for individual projects like Bob's. A second separate fund, called the European Fund for Strategic Investments, or EFSI, gives loans and EU financial guarantees to individual projects, so Bob can apply directly. Because it's not a national grant or state aid, Bob and investors like him must pass strict lending criteria. But once approved, they get the money to start. The EFSI acts like a guarantor for the feasibility of Bob's project, helping him and others who have similar risky projects to attract more private investors.
If that sparked your interest, do go to our website where you can get more details from our episodes tracking the investment plan from its very beginning. I'm joined now by Karina Kretsu. She is the European Commissioner for Regional Affairs, the woman managing the massive budget of the structural and investment funds, and, of course, Jyrki Katainen, Vice President of the European Commission in charge of jobs, growth, investment and competitiveness. What kind of track record have you seen of the structural funds and also of EFSI in actually creating jobs?
We have an evaluation what we did with funds for 2007-2013. More than 1 million jobs were being created, and I talk now about direct jobs, but of course it can multiply 2 or 3 times when we talk about indirect jobs. And we work together to maximize the impact of the funds that we have for 2014-2020. Over 600 billions we have for all 28 countries.
Yeah, when we adopted EFSI, we assessed in Commission that EFSI's impact to job creation would be something like 1.3 million new jobs. International Labour Organization says that its impact will be 2.1 million new jobs.
Well, on that note, it's an appropriate time to probably bring in an expert. Our first question is from research scholar Gregory Claes at the think tank Bruegel.
Can you please explain why regional funds and EFSI funds should be combined, given that they have very different objectives and very different geographical distribution?
It is true that our regulations are different. We already introduced during the review of multi-annual financial framework some changes to make this blending much more easier, and also e-cohesion and simplified cost option. And we are working together for the post-2020. The idea is to make much more simpler.
Everybody knows that Greece is SME-driven economy. And tourism is playing a crucial role. SMEs cannot get financing from the banks because banks have their own difficulties with the non-performing loans, for instance. We could establish a platform, investment platform for Greek SMEs operating in the tourism sector, where structural funds could provide some capital, EFSI could provide some capital, some private investors could provide some capital, and then EFSI can provide long-term, relatively cheap loans for SMEs.
Do you think that there's a problem in synergy there?
It's just according to common sense to blend different financing sources.
Of course, we have long-term, but when it's risky, it's a much more solid ground for the investors and for the private investors to come in, having also FC, cohesion policy, and private investors. It's a guarantee for them that it's a strong and solid project.
Are we going to see reductions in the kind of projects or the kind of sectors that get funded by structural funds? Universities, for example.
We will invest with priority in research, innovation, digital, and we'll slow down with infrastructure. We know that it is a need, especially from Central and Eastern Europe, because connection is a very important issue. But also we should go hand in hand also for these regions with innovation.
If I should bet something, I would say that the big chunk of majority of structural funds will remain as grant-based financing also in the future. But also at the same time, I would bet that there are more financial instruments, because sometimes it's more efficient way to use EU or public resources.
I think that's an interesting point, which I can bring in yet another expert, Matthias Dohls from the ZEW's European Economic Research Division in Germany.
Is there a long-term vision for the EFSE for the time period after 2020? It has been argued, for example, in the Five Presidents report, that the EFSE could be developed to become a stabilization mechanism for the euro area. Is that a viable option?
FC is not the optimal, because automatic stabilizers, for instance, in member states level means unemployment benefit schemes. When unemployment is rising, the subsidies are playing a bigger role. In other terms, it's stabilizing the situation. To some extent, we could see that if FC is a permanent tool for our member states, then it could address the market failure in less developing countries. I wouldn't exaggerate the role of FC as an automatic stabilizer, but it may play some role in the future.
What does 2017 hold for investment conditions in Europe?
All the uncertainty which we can see coming from outside Europe or sometimes even from within is poison for investment. So we want to underline the importance of rule-based world economy. Rule-based trade is a way to govern globalization. It's the way to improve investment environment, and this is what we are standing for.
I think European Union, as Jirki said, will remain a main actor in the world with what we'll achieve.
Well, on that note, I'd like to thank the two of you for addressing a rather complex topic for our viewers, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.